up, hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm going to be sharing my first book haul of 2021. Today I have about 23 books to share that I accumulated at the end of 2020 and the few books that I have bought starting the year off, so I'm really excited to talk about them. And I surprisingly have a good number of nonfiction books in here. I have some titles that I picked up because I was just interested in learning more about these topics, and a couple of books that I bought for grad school that I thought some of you might still be interested in. Starting off, we have Revenge of the Sluts by Natalie Walton, and this book was sent to me by today's video sponsor, which is Wattpad Books. Revenge of the Sluts follows a high school reporter named Eden who is determined to find the anonymous face that sent out an email to the entire school featuring intimate images of 7 different students. Among some of the students who feel that the girls have brought this situation upon themselves, and the school administration, who is more concerned with protecting their own reputation, Eden ends up banding together with the 7 girls included in this email in order to stop this from happening in the future, find out who did it in the first place, and also change their school's mindset around slut shaming. Revenge porn, or as I prefer to call it, image-based sexual abuse, is a really serious issue. I know that when I was just out of high school, I discovered a website full of forums for the non-consensual sharing of sexual images of people who were my classmates or in other local schools. So it's a topic I'm very passionate about and one that I would love to read a book about. The author is, of course, also very passionate about this issue. Like, she wrote a whole book about it. So if you're interested in learning more about image-based sexual abuse, or maybe finding support if you've been a victim of it yourself, there's a lot of resources on her website, which I've linked down below. I just love stories of young people finding a common ground in an issue that they all want to change the views of their community about. So I'm very interested in this one. It's actually also a Waddy Awards winner, which I think is awesome. And the book does come out on February 2nd, but it's available for pre-order now. So if you're interested in reading it as well, definitely check the link in the description to find out more. So next up, I have a stack of books that I actually purchased during my New York City book shopping vlog. So if you're interested in seeing me visiting 7 different amazing bookstores in New York City and the process of me choosing out these books, it's one of my favorite videos I've made in a long time, so I definitely recommend checking it out in the description below. The first is a book I am currently reading, which is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. This is a memoir written by a therapist who is going through a difficult breakup and decides to seek out her own therapist. And it is really about what she learns through this experience with this new, younger therapist, as well as what she learns from a couple of different clients that she has of her own. I'm almost done with this book. I have like the tiniest bit left, and I think tonight I'm just gonna have to sit down and bang the rest out because I'm absolutely loving it. As a mental health counselor and someone who's been going to therapy for so many years, I thought this would be the perfect book for me, and I was definitely right. I've learned a lot of concepts and interventions that I can definitely integrate into my own practice with clients, but I feel it's also causing me to reflect a lot about like how I function as a person. And so definitely, if you are in like a mental health related profession, I would highly recommend picking it up, but I think everyone could really gain something from this read. It's super well written. The author is refreshingly honest, which I really appreciate. And if you are looking for a super engaging nonfiction read that you can probably take a lot away from, I definitely recommend picking up Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. Next up, I have How It All Blew Up by Arvin Ahmadi, and this is a young adult fiction about a boy named Amir who is coming back from a trip to Rome where it seems that he really went to like find himself on some eat, pray, love-ish, when he is wrongfully detained by US Customs and is now caught in a situation where he's basically fighting for all of the freedom that he just won of himself. The main character is Muslim and queer, so it seems like a devastating but uplifting coming-of-age novel about the intersectionality of different identities and really finding yourself. I've loved both of Arvin's previous books that he's published, and I know that this one is very close to his heart, so I'm super pumped to read it. Next up, I have Flow, The Psychology of the Optimal Experience by Mihail Csikszentmihalyi, and this is written by the sort of father of positive psychology, which is kind of a newer branch of psychology dedicated to happiness, but that's like a really poor way to describe it. It's more about like creating the most positive well-being that you could, finding satisfaction in your own life and achieving your goals. And he really pioneered this concept of flow, which is a state many of us have probably entered at some point in our lives, but we weren't necessarily conscious of it. It's a state of being you enter when you are completely invested in something that you are passionate about and doing, typically something creative. It's like when you are like painting or reading or working out, that time just passes by without you even noticing it. So this book expands on that concept and really teaches people like how to foster flow and all the benefits of it. So I read a little bit from the author when I was in my positive psychology class in undergrad, but I'm super intrigued on learning more. So this is one that I think is going to be very thought-provoking and interesting, and it seems like a good read. Next up, I have Instant Karma by Marissa Meyer, and I've been particularly interested in this one because it's more of a contemporary release, whereas all of the Marissa Meyer books I've read in the past have been very sci-fi. Our main character is a pretty judgy overachiever named Prudence who wakes up one day and has the ability to cast instant karma on other people. So Prudence is having fun with her newfound powers, but the one person they won't work on is her slacker of a lab partner. So like yada yada yada, they fall in love. Prudence learns a lot from the experience. Like it's YA, you kind of know what you get. I will note that while this book was releasing, I did see a lot of criticism talking about how like karma is an intrinsically like spiritual and religious concept, and the ability to just cast it on other people isn't really how it works. So that's definitely something I'm going to be keeping in mind as I'm reading. But like I said, it's something new from a favorite author of mine. I think the cover is adorable, and I'm just hoping for like a cutesy, lighthearted contemporary. The next book I purchased during that New York City book shopping trip is Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. This nonfiction title seems to tie in a lot of the author's own life experiences while exploring the feminist movement and specifically focusing on how white feminism perpetuates the oppression of other types of women like women of color, queer women, disabled women. Now the term white feminism turns a lot of people off because they think it means white people who are feminists are inherently bad, and that's not the case. White feminism refers to how people of privilege who are often at the forefront of these movements often fail to recognize the intersectionality between gender, race, class, sexual orientation, and the like. And when you fail to acknowledge that, you're continuing to hurt the people that you believe you're fighting for. Being a feminist is a conscious and ongoing effort, and so I know for a fact that I have so much more to learn and do in order to really feel that my feminism is intersectional. So I feel like Hood Feminism is a great way for me to continue that, and I'm super excited to dive in. I think I'm gonna learn a lot from it. Then I have The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, and this is a book that was initially recommended to me by one of my professors in grad school, and then I had a couple of my classmates read it and absolutely love it, so I thought it was finally time to get on the train. All I really know about this book is that it focuses on the triadic relationship between the body, the mind, and the brain when undergoing trauma, how it sort of shapes our lives, and how we need to incorporate all three of them in order to properly heal from it. I have yet to do a lot of work with trauma with my clients, and I know for a fact that's something I will definitely encounter in my career as a counselor, but I feel like this is going to be a great book to really introduce me to the many important aspects that are involved when helping people overcome their trauma, so I'm excited to dive in. And then the last book I picked up on this New York is not shitty, is Don't Tell Me to Relax, Emotional Resilience in the Age of Rage, Feels, and Freakouts by Ralph De La Rosa. And I picked this one up totally randomly. I'd never heard about it before, but I saw it on a bookshelf, and it just felt like the type of book, like it felt like it was like dropped out of the sky into my life when I needed it. I kind of just want to read a couple of words off the bat because I feel like it gives a better idea of like what this book is about and why I was interested. So it talks about how politics, climate change, racism, sexism, and biases leave us feeling so stressed and uncertain, and really how to cope with all of those feelings of emotional burnout, ways that they can cause self-empathy, social understanding, and activism that can be both internal and external. It seems like a short book. It also seems like it's going to be a little funny, and I just feel like this is a book I could really benefit from reading, especially after just like the train wreck that was 2020 and the ways that it's changed all of us. So I feel like I just keep saying I'm excited to read it, but like it's a book haul. I'm excited to read every book in here. That's why I have it. Next up, I actually have a book that was sent to me by a subscriber named Lara. I do have a P.O. box that's in the description of every single one of my videos, so if you ever want to send me a letter, a card, a drawing, a book that you think I would enjoy, you're always welcome to. And so Lara sent me a copy of The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. And again, this is one that just like came in right when I needed it, because I had been thinking about how I wanted to start reading some of Toni Morrison's works because again, like they're so highly acclaimed by everyone. This is a memoir from the perspective of a Black woman who grew up with a lot of self-loathing and a desire to conform to westernized standards of beauty. And it seems to be just about like what she's learned from that experience, how she has found comfort and beauty in her own skin, and it seems to have lots of questions about race, class, gender, and with the subtlety and grace that have always characterized her writing. I feel like this will be a great book to get me started on Toni Morrison's work. Again, it's short. I feel like I could fly through it really quickly, and I have a feeling I'm definitely going to love it. So the next couple of books off this list are UK editions that I bought of books that I really love. I used to order all of my UK editions off of Book Depository, which is a great website that offers free international shipping, but after learning that they're owned by Amazon, and I'm really trying to like decrease the amount of support I send Amazon's way, I decided to try out Blackwell's, which I had a great experience with, so I'm going to show you the books I got from them. First up are the UK editions of King of Fools and Queen of Volts by Amanda Foody, and these are the second and third books in the Shadow Game series. I had been avoiding getting these for so long for no reason, but now I have the whole set in the UK and US editions, which makes me super happy. I've talked about Ace of Shades a ton on my channel. It is a super fun YA fantasy set in the scandalous city of Sin and follows different gangs and mob bosses with just a ton of magic and super lovable characters. I have not read Queen of Volts yet, but it is definitely on the top of my to read for 2021 list. I'm hoping to pick it up in the next couple of weeks and just be heartbroken by this series that I love so much. And then the other book I bought from Blackwell's is Hollowpox: The Hunt for Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. It is a middle grade that follows a girl named Morrigan Crow who is swept away out of a sort of cursed life in order to win a spot for herself in the Wondrous Society, and it is just all about her finding her own like found family, learning to harness her new powers, and it is just joyous and comforting and wonderful in every way. I think Hollowpox might actually be my favorite book in this series because it did make it onto my favorites of 2020 list. I just feel like it is a step up in the sophistication and maturity of this series, and I cannot wait to read book 4 when it comes out. I read these books so quickly as soon as they come out, and then I am just like desperately waiting a full year until the next release. And of course, I did recently buy the US edition of Hollowpox. I am a self-identified book collector. I just love having so many beautiful different editions of my favorite books. It makes me really happy, and this is a book I loved so much. So if you have not started Nevermore yet, I highly recommend it. I actually listened to all of the Nevermore books on audio because the audiobooks are fantastic. They just really bring the story to life, making it even more whimsical and magical. So if you're an audiobook listener, I definitely recommend the audio version, but if you're not and you're just looking for a fun fantasy story, Nevermore is one to check out. Moving on, I have a handful of books that I bought as a part of my studies for mental health counseling. I am now in my final year of my master's program, and I'm super excited about it. What I am not excited about is the fact that I have 2 very important big tests coming up this semester. The first is the Counselor Comprehensive Preparedness Exam, and I have to take that in order to graduate and sort of like prove to the accreditation board that like I've learned all the stuff that I was supposed to. And the second is a voluntary exam that I'm taking, which is the National Counselor Exam, and that will enable me to become a board certified counselor once I get my license, which is a really big deal in the counseling world, so I'm hoping I pass these 2. In order to pass them, I first have the Encyclopedia of Counseling, and I love that it says Authentic Purple Book on the front, but this seems to be like everything I need to know for both of those exams, and I figured that this would just be a really good book for me to have on hand as I'm entering the world of being a novice counselor. I haven't looked at these at all, I gotta be honest, but it seems that there's a lot of like practice questions for me to do, as well as hopefully some review in here. Again, I don't know. And the next is Mastering the National Counselor Examination and the Counselor Preparation Comprehensive Examination. I'm assuming it's the same thing. This one does look like it has a little bit more review in there, which is what I need. So wish me luck on both of those tests. Another book I recently purchased for just my own counselor education is Cognitive Behavioral Therapy Basics and Beyond by Judith S. Beck. And this is actually written by the daughter of the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, there's a lot of different theories that inform therapy, and while I come from a very person-centered approach, meaning that like I am not the expert, the client is in the driver's seat, I'm there to be a supportive figure and help guide them towards the goals that they want to achieve. But in a lot of the interventions and like practices I use in order to help them achieve those goals, I tend to gravitate towards CBT. And one of my personal goals for my internship this semester is to really hone my skills of using these theoretical interventions and bringing them into the therapy room. So I thought it would be great for me to have like Basics and Beyond, like a whole book dedicated to the actual theory and practices of CBT that I can refer to. The therapist practice I'm interning at this semester is actually very DBT in nature, or a dialectical behavioral therapy, which is kind of like a branch off of CBT. So I'm just gonna have like a lot of behavioral therapy in my life this year, which is great because I think I can benefit a lot from it, but I'm excited to learn more and just grow as a counselor. And the last book out of this little counseling section is one I actually got for free and like legit picked up off the street. Outside of my boyfriend's house one day, there was a box that just said free reference books, and I found one that really applied to me, and that is Mental Health First Aid USA for Adults Assisting Young People. And again, it just seems like a great little reference book featuring how to work with adolescents and young people who are dealing with different mental health concerns. In my last semester, I took a crisis counseling course, and as a part of it, we had to get psychological first aid certified. So I felt like this would be a great book for me to have as kind of like all of the basics that I learned in that course. And lastly on this haul, I have a stack of books that were sent to me by different publishers and whatnot that I just wanted to include because I'm really excited to read them. The first is A Promised Land by Barack Obama, which is the first in his installment of presidential memoirs. I feel so bougie being able to say that this was actually sent to me by Barack Obama's team. They were doing a Goodreads Q&A and they asked a couple of people to ask questions for him to consider and send them a copy of the book. So my question did not get chosen, but I'm still super pumped to read this one. President Obama's time in office was really the first elections and government administration that I was cognizant of and started to form my own opinions on. So I'm very interested to see like what his perspective on his time being a president was, and like all of the behind the scenes you don't really get to know elsewhere. I'm definitely not someone who thinks that Obama can do no wrong. I have several issues with a lot of his choices that he made as president. But, you know, like I said, that first president that you're really aware of is a lasting impression on you. And I do have a lot of respect for the man and what he's done during his presidency as well as after. So I'm super interested in reading this one. I actually think I might choose to listen to the massively long audiobook because it's narrated by him. And I just love listening to nonfiction, especially memoirs, when they're narrated by the author. So I'm intrigued to see what it carries. Next up, I have Lore by Alexander Bracken, which was sent to me by Disney Hyperion. Okay, gotta be honest, this is the first time I actually have read the synopsis of the book, and the first lines are, "Every 7 years, the Agon begins. As a punishment for past rebellion, 9 Greek gods are forced to walk the earth as mortals. They are hunted by the descendants of ancient bloodlines, all eager to kill a god and seize their divine power and immortality." Ooh, it's set in New York City. Also, did not know that. From what I can gather, our main character's name is Lore, and she has turned her back on the hunt called the Agon after her family had been brutally murdered, but she ends up forming an alliance with a childhood friend she believed to be dead, along with the god Athena, and it sort of propels her back into this world and invites a lot of deadly, dangerous things along her way. I love Alexander Bracken. The Darkest Mind series was one of like the first YA series that I read, and it's a big piece of my heart. And I'm definitely intrigued to see what she does with this Greek-inspired fantasy. I initially wasn't super interested in lore because like mythology just isn't something I tend to read about, but I've heard so many wonderful reviews from my friends of how much they love it, and after reading the synopsis for the first time, I'm definitely intrigued. Next, I have Wings of Ebony by J.L., and this was sent to me by Simon & Schuster. Our main character is named Rue, and when her mother is murdered, she is snatched away by her father, who abandoned her a long time ago, who takes her away to his home country that is full of magic. Ooh, she's half god and half human. I love it. Rue's existence being half god, half human is a crime in Gizon, and she decides to break their main law that you are not allowed to leave Gizon, and finds out that in her hometown of Houston, it is entirely overrun by violence and danger, and her sister is quickly falling prey to it. I did not know much about this book before I received it, but it seems like a super compelling urban fantasy. I tend to stray away from like the super high fantasies, but anything that can integrate like a real world city and timeline with some magical powers is like just my jam. Finally, I have just a handful of book of the month choices that I've received over the last couple of months, and these are like my favorites that I'm most excited to read. First up is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1926 Shanghai. Our main character's name is Juliet, and she is the heir to one of the major gangs in Shanghai called the Scarlet Gang, with their rivals being the White Flowers, and the heir to that gang is actually Juliet's first love who betrayed her. There appears to be some sort of illness that might be demonic in nature that is causing members of both gangs to claw their own throats out, so Juliet and Roma must band together in order to stop it and bring peace. I have heard such great things about These Violent Delights, and while these like historical fiction retellings aren't things that I normally pick up, like the reviews are definitely making me feel like it is one full of wonderful writing, beautiful world building, and a truly historical romance. This is definitely one I'm hoping to get to in 2021. Next, I have The Removed by Brandon Hobson, and this follows an Indigenous family that has kind of been shattered after the death of their teenage son. So the mother is struggling with the father's Alzheimer's, the daughter lives a life of solitude, and the other son has turned to a life of drugs. So every year this family has a bonfire in which they celebrate a Cherokee holiday, along with being the one time that they connect and talk actively about Ray Ray's memory. But this year is very different, as the mother and father have found a foster child that seems to keep the father's mental space at bay, and it's really all about like the blurring lines between the normal world and the spirit world, and how each of these different family members are affected by it. The synopsis seems a little difficult to grasp just by reading it, and of course that comes from the fact that this is a heavily Cherokee folklore inspired story that I do not know anything about. But it seems like a really profound story about grief and family dynamics, which are things I love to read about, so I think it's going to be a really good one. Then I have This Close to Okay by Lisa Cross Smith. This is one of my most anticipated books of 2021, which only became mostly anticipated after I got it in a Book of the Month box and thought it sounded so good for me. It follows a therapist who is driving home one day and finds a man on a bridge who is attempting suicide, and so she convinces him to come home with her and have a cup of coffee, while also trying to hide the fact that like this is what she does for her day job. And so it seems to be about what these two strangers learn from each other in a very short time, prompted by a chance circumstance, and really how they're able to contribute to the healing of each other. It sounds so good. I feel like I'm really hyping it up in my head, and that's making me a little nervous that it's like not gonna come through with my expectations in the end. But nonetheless, this is another one that I think I'm gonna be picking up as like one of my very next contemporaries to read, and I hope it's good. And finally, I have The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr., and this is like a really hot book at the moment. I feel like everyone's talking about it, and I just need to read it and find out what it holds for myself. So this book follows two enslaved men named Isaiah and Samuel, who are forced to live and work on the same southern plantation, and through this experience, the two of them have fallen into a very profound, deep love for one another, and are kind of the only solace they receive when being enslaved by others. And so an older man who is a fellow slave comes to the plantation seeking to gain favor by preaching the master's gospel on the plantation, and it starts to really upturn the harmony of the enslaved folk that are all here. Something about this book just feels heavy already, and I don't mean like physically, like I already feel an emotional weight on my heart without even reading it yet. It seems like it's going to be a profound, stunning story that I'm really excited to experience. So this is another one, like, historical fiction, not my thing, but I guess there's something about recent ones that are coming out that are really catching my eye because I am super excited to read this one. Alrighty, so that concludes my first book haul of 2021. I really hope you guys enjoyed. In the comments below, I would love to hear your thoughts on any of the books that I shared, whether you have read them or like me, you're excited to read them, and any books that you maybe got at the end of 2020 or the start to 2021 that you're excited to read. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for a new one. Bye!